Okay, good morning everyone. Welcome to the webinar that I have prepared with cooperation with Agile Trainings. The topic is an Agile bubble, and today in roughly 50 minutes I will try to make the bubble a little smaller and explain what actually is behind the Agile approach, which is being quoted for the past almost 20 years more and more often in a larger and larger organization. My name is Karel Smutný. I'm an enterprise Agile coach, and for almost 10 years I've been helping companies, mostly Czech, with Agile adoptions and transformations. I have a developer background. I came from a programmer position, however I still actively code, and it is still my passion. Sometimes even I co-communicate with my clients. For the past 10 years, I have worked with roughly 17 teams. If I count only those that I've seen multiple times and actually left some mark on them. And in the past few years, among my clients were Vodafone, and then life insurance company, Thermo Fisher Scientific, or Deutsche Börse. And in all of these and many others, I have mostly experienced Scrum, Agile development on a larger complex product where multiple teams were involved at once, which helped me build an expertise in large-scale Scrum and Scrum patterns. I'm a professional Scrum trainer at Scrum.org, one of the biggest worldwide organizations, the one behind Scrum itself, founded by Ken Schwaber, one of the authors. And at Scrum.org we provide consistent quality professional Scrum trainings and certifications. I will talk more about that at the end of this webinar. I would like to also invite you to Prague Scrum Beer, which is an informal monthly event which are organized since 2014. On the web page here you can register. We have over 800 members, and our events are in English. Practitioners for all over Prague and other cities gather every month for case studies, workshops, open spaces and everything. So I would be very happy to see you at one. Okay, so I'm used to an audience in person. This webinar experience is actually very new for me. I interact with people a lot, so because there is no one sitting here, please ask questions anytime to the chat window which you see right next to the YouTube window, and I will be happy to answer those questions anytime. I see them here on my phone from the studio, and ask anything anytime. I'm here for you. So I spoiled everything for you. I have to start a new page. So today I will talk about the Agile approach and actually what it is, why are many companies interested in it, why there is so much buzz about it, and if some by accident it's being understood by the overall community in a slightly different way than was originally intended. And then I will discuss Scrum as one of the most popular, most widely used Agile framework, and what perils you need to take into account when you want to adopt Scrum in your product development. So the word Agile is quoted very often, and even large organizations in Czech Republic and in Europe and US and all over the world are adopting this approach on a large scale. Some companies even on the whole company scale. And if I ask people at conferences, people at trainings, my potential or current customers, what actually they expect from Agile, what they think it is, they usually quote some aspects or some dimensions that they connect with Agile. One of them is that it is supposed to be faster development, faster time to market, that is being with your product significantly sooner than you would be otherwise using traditional sequential or waterfall processes. What is also usually quoted is that there's a very strong customer focus. I'm sometimes puzzled. Something specific to Agile, because I would expect from any company selling services and products to customer that are customer first, but for some reason the Agile movement or Agile approach is known for this customer obsession and customer focus. Very often is quoted the team collaboration. Again, like it wouldn't be helpful in any other circumstances, and specifically a cross-functional collaboration, which is a very specific type of collaboration. Cross-functional collaboration is when you have a team, when people with multiple functional specialization or expertise work together, having a common responsibility for the delivery, and each will contribute with their own expertise. However, their responsibility is over the end-to-end product, which is a difference from working in functional silos, when each person has its own responsibility, just bounded by their own expertise. And cross-functional collaboration is something that companies have experimented in the second half of last century, and is not really anything new. And way before an Agile movement came to being, the cross-functional collaboration was across Japanese companies. It's a very good result. Other things that is usually quoted is self-organization or more autonomy, if I say it in more generic words. And people are expecting, thanks to that bigger engagement of employees, because they have more autonomy, because they have a cross-functional collaboration, focus more on the customer. What is also often quoted, besides these, is cost savings or efficiency. The traditional processes are known not to be overly efficient in certain areas, especially software development, when the Agile movement originally started. I have left some space inside of this circle. All of these are actually not the foundations or the core of Agile. All of these are either necessary conditions to be Agile, or they are consequences or even side effects of Agile. But the whole fundamental of Agile approach is slightly somewhere else, and it is adaptiveness. And I will put it into the center. Agile basically equals adaptive. This is the whole thing. It started with ability to adapt to changes. We know that life on Earth is adaptive, some more, some less, and adaptiveness is not either or, 0 or 1. It is a scale. You can be adaptive a lot or a little. And the whole point of adaptiveness is to be able to quickly respond to changes. And what are the changes? And I ask people on my trainings, what changes do you need to adapt to? One of the most obvious answers is market changes. Of course, the market changes beyond your control. It's there. It's faster every day, and whatever project, initiative, or new product we have in mind today, it might be totally invalid 6 months from now, or a year from now. So responding to market changes is an obvious thing. However, there is one more thing that product development organizations needs to respond to. And these are often quoted as changes to requirements. The requirements always changes, and you can hear the complaints of programmers all the time. They keep changing the requirements all the time, so please make up your mind. We code it and you change the requirements all over. But actually changes in requirements is not actually correct. Requirements is I want something, I know, I need this, please do it, you do it, and then I get it. However, customers, users, and other people often change their mind because what they get is actually not what they need. And it's not because they wanted the wrong thing. It's because they didn't really know what they should want. They didn't really know in the first place what the requirement should look like. The customers and us, product development group, has assumptions. The customer has a need. I will draw a customer here. They have a need or desire or a problem, and either there is already something on the market that satisfies the need, or there isn't, and you as a product company wants to address this need. And the solution is actually unknown at the beginning, even for you and the customer. And once we start thinking about the need and start to understand it, we come with a lot of assumptions. And we have to weigh how to look at it. We say these assumptions hold true and start building around them, or we admit the assumptions actually might not be true. They might be false, and we need to prove them or disprove them. And the whole adaptive approach builds on the assumption that we actually don't know what the customer really needs. We have only assumptions, and we need to prove them. And what showed during the history of past 40 years that just talking and analyzing and drawing and discussing is not enough to understand the needs properly. And you need to actually deliver something, some partial solution, so that the customer or user can experiment with, and then they will know if the solution is right or wrong, or slightly right or slightly wrong. So what actually is the change is not change in requirements, but it is the changes of understanding of customer needs. It should be N. And this is what changes. This is what changes with every single increment you put to the product, every single piece of feedback you get from the customers, users, or stakeholders, or market, and it changes your understanding and therefore your future plans. And this is where adaptiveness comes in. You need adaptiveness not only for the changes in market, which are there if you want or not, but for the understanding of customer needs. And the basic idea is to start building the action solution rather sooner than later. Do not build on the assumptions too much and start proving them or disproving them as soon as possible. So there might be some analysis of the customer needs. However, don't rely on it too much, because you are very likely only piling speculations and fantasies rather than actual facts. And the adaptive approach says, please start building the solution. Ship it to the customer or user as soon as possible, just a piece which addresses part of his need or problem, and let them experience if your solution solves it the right way or not, and build the feedback to the next iteration. So you deliver something small, and with each single iteration, your solution becomes not necessarily bigger, but riper, more towards addressing the actual need, because your understanding of the needs changes, and also the customer's understanding of the solution changes all the time. So these iterations better be shorter, in a matter of weeks, And after each iteration, what you get is not only value from the product, but also better understanding and better knowledge of the customer's needs. So this is the whole point why agile approach or adaptive approach comes in the first place. It originated in the software development when this need was most imminent at the end of 90s with the boom of software development industry. However, it appears to be very helpful in other areas whenever you are building some new solution to a problem which you don't fully understand at the beginning. And these areas or dimensions or buzzwords around the green bubble, which are on the screen right now, are part of the agile approach. As I said, some of them are actual conditions, necessary conditions, some of them are consequences. So if you want to be adaptive, you want to start building the solution to the customer so that you get feedback, so that you have better understanding on their needs. One of the necessary conditions is that you create a team of people which is cross-functional. I will draw it over here. A team of people which the team is cross-functional, not necessarily the people. It means you are building a solution and you need certain set of expertise, and you put to the team all the people to cover all the expertise. The usual misconception is that everybody in the team needs to know and understand everything, especially for complex products. It is not possible. It is not true. The team as a whole needs to understand and know everything, not necessarily every single member. And the cross-functional collaboration is not just the sum of elements, it builds from the synergy. Because this team is responsible as a whole for the end-to-end delivery. In the traditional organizations, each function has their own functional silo. The analysts, the programmers, the marketing people, the user experience designers, the testers, the IT operations, the IT security, and everything. Everybody has their own part of responsibility, and they are handing over parts of these solutions onto another. And this creates unnecessary waste, especially if losing the overall context and the understanding of customer needs. So one of the necessary conditions for adaptive approach is having a cross-functional team which is responsible as a whole for the end-to-end results. And because this team is mostly discovering a non-existing solution as opposed to fulfilling prepared requirements, it more builds on a creative work, not fancy drawing and art, but creative in a way that you just have to think out of the box and create new solutions. So more autonomy, or the self-organization, self-management of this team is also necessary. They organize themselves, they have more autonomy, it increases their intrinsic motivation, they put more to the creativity, they are not constrained by processes and a command and control management style. This is another one of the conditions for adaptiveness. Of course, it is customer focused because that's the whole point, to create the right solution for the customer. And the bigger engagement comes as a result. People are suddenly part of the whole solution, not just a cog in a machine who is fulfilling their function, but they have bigger responsibility they originally had. And the bigger engagement comes as an effect of the autonomy and the creativeness and the overall responsibility. Of course, team collaboration is conditioned. It is the same. You need the whole team to be responsible, not just single person. And how is it with the other words? So what about faster development? adaptive approach or agile is not necessarily faster. It is not the primary focus. It seems faster, and sometimes it is, because you deliver something tangible every few weeks so that you can get the feedback from the customers. But sometimes you deliver something and then undo it based on the feedback. So you not always go forward. Sometimes you need to go back, move aside, and try a different path. This is the whole adaptive approach. So being fast is not a primary focus, and being adaptive might sometimes mean being slower. However, you are righter. What you do is more aimed towards addressing the real needs than delivering something fast. So the faster development is more of a side effect and is not always there, and the same comes with the time to market. The point of adaptive is not to be faster, but to be righter. How about cost savings and efficiency? I didn't connect it to anything yet, because they are also not the primary focus of adaptive approach. Also, the cost savings might not happen. They usually happen thanks to two effects. One is that by building a cross-functional team which works together in short iterations, you eliminate a lot of the waste created by handover of documents between multiple functional silos and losing a lot of information. Another savings might come from the fact that during the development you find out that many of the original requirements that you assumed would be very helpful are actually not, and you do not do them at all. So there might be cost savings, and I have observed them in many of my clients' engagements. However, it is not the primary focus. Again, I will draw them with a dashed line to see them as a kind of side effect that in some companies might take place, and the same goes for efficiency. So these are matter effects or consequences rather than reasons to be adaptive. The reason to be adaptive is to be able to change on market changes and primarily on understanding of customer needs, which is right here. So how much time do we have? Still enough. I will go back for a second. Sometimes people ask me, so we heard about Agile, we heard about all the blue words, never heard of adaptive. Where does it come from? You keep saying that, however, in conferences, in sales slide decks of some scaling frameworks, on the trainings, we heard this word very rarely, if at all. So did you make it up? Actually, no. The whole Agile movement became popular around the beginning of the century, and in 2001, 17 professional software developers and consultants from the area of software development industry gathered, and they all had experience with frameworks like Scrum or Extreme Programming or Crystal or Dynamic System Development Method and others, which are nowadays more of a forgotten. However, at the time they were a thing, and they all were built around this approach that I'm talking about. And they gathered and wanted to convey a marketing message. So we have this experience. It is profound. We did the research that suggests that this approach is better suited for the software development. We need to scream it to the world, and we need a better name than lightweight methodologies, because it just doesn't sound cool at all. And they came up with several words, and they were picking one. Which one? The Agile. What their marketing message was, the outcome, is the manifesto of Agile software development. It is sometimes quoted by Agile consultants as a sacred scripture. At least it's not. It's a marketing message to make a buzz, and it definitely did in a very good way. And when they were giving its name, they were picking between agile and adaptive. Actually, agile won just by 2 votes out of 17. Why did not adaptive win? Why we don't have manifesto of adaptive software development is that one of these guys actually had a methodology, adaptive software development, and a trademark and a domain in the book, and they were just afraid that he would get all the business. So that's why the word adaptive slowly disappeared from the language. Unfortunately, not for the better. So, how you put the adaptive approach in place? The first thing is that you must first need to admit or understand if, while building a new product or developing it, adding new features, if you actually are sure that the things in your backlog, in your plans, are really needed or necessary, or if it is only based on assumptions. And if they are, this is hard to admit actually, if they are, what would be the best way to start proving them or disproving them? And it showed that one of the approaches is to first start with asking yourself the question, what actually is the product? And I usually draw it at the big black box. This is what the customer sees. The product solves his problem, his need or his desire, and he sees the product usually in a much broader way than do people inside of the company. And one of the examples might be from the banking industry. What is the product when you are a client of a bank? Is it an internet banking system? Of course it's not. It's just a channel. It's a way how you communicate with the bank. Some people find it helpful because they can do it from their couch. They don't have to visit the branch. And there is a lot of things that you can actually do with the real product, which might be a current account and having your money somewhere and be able to pay with them through cards or transfers or anything. It can be a mortgage. So maybe let's go with mortgage. It's one of the most complex financial product in the retail banking. So what does the customer see as a product? It's not only the money that the bank lends you for financing your house, it's the whole process, starting with the first contact with the broker or the agent in the bank, the whole approval process and risk approval and all the things that the bank needs you to sign or everything. I just had a question. I will respond to it very shortly. So that was the whole approval process. Then the actual emission of the money. Part of the product might be that the bank can hold the deposit somewhere before the transfer of the real estate comes before the parties. The whole installment, the yearly annual reports for taxes and everything, including servicing, is the product from the customer's perspective. So if you look in the inside of the company, actually many departments, many software systems, not only CRM, accounting systems, part of the internet banking and so on, are part of the product. And then this Navy development team, which touches all of the things all over, might be actually very, very large. So the question is, what do you inside of the company see as the product? So this is the first question that you need to answer. I will now go to the question that I got from the chat window, and we'll go back. So the question is, hello, in your opinion, is it possible to apply Agile in non-development based projects? Any examples? If not, how, in your opinion, it could be applied for business projects? I'm not sure if by development you mean software development. Yes, it can be applied in non-software development projects. The question is, how much uncertainty is there in the project? So how much assumptions you have that can't be proven just by analysis or surveys or interviews. If they can, and you come up with a set of facts that are true and you are sure about them, then you can follow a sequential process that will actually lead you to the right solution in a more efficient way. And whenever there is an uncertainty about the actual customer needs, then comes the adaptive approach. And yes, I have seen it in activities that are not at all related to the software development, or the software development is just a small part of it. However, Agile is not suitable for activities which are basically all the same, and you just need a better efficiency. So it's the assembly lines. It can be call center, it can be sales process, and then other things that happen basically the same all the time, and there is not really profound things to adapt to every single week. You just need to make it more efficient, and there are other approaches that are more suitable. Okay, please let me know if it answered your question or not. I will again see it on my phone. So back to adopting the adaptive approach. You start with the product definition. So this is what is supposed to be valuable for the customer. It can be pretty large and complex, or what I see mostly in many companies, unfortunately, that they take Scrum as described, the basic one-team Scrum with 9 people, and start building small teams with their own product owners and define product as a small part of the whole. So, for example, they have a team which works on the mobile banking application, and another team which is working on the internet banking application, and another team which is working on the primary accounting core system, and another team which is working on the enterprise service bus, and so much. And they define these as products from the perspective of the Agile approach. However, from the perspective of customer, they are not. They are just a part of the product. The same like when you buy a car, a steering wheel is not a product for you, it's just a part of it. So how you define a product is a choice of the management, and it is actually some kind of scale when at one point you have the whole product focus, which is the black box that the customer sees, which is sometimes really, really large and complex. And on the other side of the axis is just one component, which is just a small part, this small green box inside of the large black one, which you can define as a small application which by itself is not necessarily valuable, but as a part of the whole product is valuable. And you can imagine, and this is a rather simplification, a slider which can move both ways. And this is, so what do we see as a product, and of what do we optimize the value for the customer? So if you move the slider to the very right, then the product is the whole mortgage, and you can optimize the value around the whole process, around the whole package. It is large, it is very complex, and it might not be manageable by a single person to decide which part of the process to optimize. If you move the slider to the total left, then your product definition is a small part, and then you can optimize locally the value just of the small part. However, you lose the big picture and the customer focus. So it is more manageable, however, less adaptive, because you have much further to the real customer and their needs, and you more work with other components like your internal customers, which is not very helpful way. So this is a choice, and you are basically making a trade-off between the ability to optimize the value of the whole, ability to optimize the value of the whole, and on the other side, the more you are moving the slider to the whole product focus, the more complex is it, and the less manageable is optimizing the whole. So however you define the product, so I will draw two different setups. Maybe as a large portion which is more closer to the customer and more to its needs, or a large number of smaller portions, smaller components. And each of these have their own product owner. It's a person from the Scrum framework, is a role whose responsibility, product owner, whose responsibility is to optimize value of the product. Very often, the person in companies, product owners, are a guy or girl who put requirements into Jira, into the backlog, and they gather it all around. However, this is not the primary responsibility of the product owner, is optimizing the value of the product. So they need to be very close to the market realities, to the business realities, to the actual customers, and understand what value the product actually delivers to the customers. And the smaller the product is, the further it is for the actual customer, and then the more prone it is for local optimization. So you optimize your small little component, so it's in the best in class, and it's easy because it's small. However, you don't have really enough feedback loops to the real customer if this is actually helpful. And this is moving the slider. The more to the right, the better you can optimize the value of the whole product. The more to the left, the more prone to the local optimization the whole setup it is. The more complex the organization becomes, and more communications between product owners and other supporting roles is there, and actually you start losing the adaptiveness, because you start losing the ability to understand the needs of the actual customers. So I have here a question which is related: how can a couple Scrum teams work in a large corporate which is not agile? How should they deal with dependencies from other non-agile teams? Yeah, this is very common thing. So to a certain level it can work. However, all dependencies on non-agile teams just brings the non-agility to your team. So you can follow the Scrum process mechanically, you can reap some low-hanging fruit benefits from it. However, you are likely losing adaptiveness of the whole. So it depends what those teams are actually built around. If it's a component or something which is close to the customer. So the question again goes here: can the slider be moved more to the right? Is it possible? Would it need change in other parts of the organization? So you start with the customer view, what the customer sees as a product, and ask yourself the questions: what do you see as a product from the internal perspective? So each Scrum team has a product owner, what is their product, and that is how optimize the value of the customer, or does it locally optimize? There is no easy answer for this. However, in general, these kind of setups of Scrum teams in a large product being part of a totally non-agile environment usually are not agile themselves. They just follow a Scrum practices by the book, however, are still part of this huge waterfallish machine. Probably I could answer better if I know more about the context, so feel free to contact me after this session. So we have a product owner whose role is to optimize the whole, optimize the value of the product. It is the core responsibility, and I promised in the annotation for this webinar is what are the things that you need to avoid during agile adoptions. And number one thing, from my experience, from my engagement, is you need to ask yourself, what is your product? And I experience basically all the time that this question does not have easy answer or simple answer or right answer. If you start with a black box with a customer sees a product, it is very, very complex, and hardly anyone can imagine that it can be delivered as a whole in an adaptive way. So then you start moving the slider to the left and asking yourself, so is it now manageable? Is this big enough that it delivers actual value to the customer, but is it not too small that we will be prone to local optimization and doing stuff that is nice by itself but doesn't really help to the customer? So then you might end up with actually multiple smaller teams. As Scrum teams recommends the size of a single team to be roughly from 3 to 9. So if this number of people in the broader product definition would be bigger than 9, you might end up with a larger number of Scrum teams. However, they all share a single product owner with a single product backlog. And they all share responsibility end to end for delivering the value which is captured by the product backlog and optimized by the product owner. The alternative might be to cut the product into very small pieces and assign a product owner to each Scrum team and have their own little product backlogs, which is possible. However, then you very likely lose the adaptiveness. What you gain might be utilization of the people. Their focus will be bigger for what they do. They will be highly specialized in their small component, and it might not be only software component, it might be part of the process. So in the larger banks which are ongoing agile transformations nowadays, there might be teams responsible for part of the customer journey, maybe acquisition, servicing, and other parts. However, their green box is smaller. They optimize only there. So they are better utilized. They do what they know. However, at the expense of losing the overall adaptiveness of the whole system, because they might be working actually on items which are not the most valuable, and it is hardly visible because you have multiple backlogs. So what I recommend is actually to have broader product definition, lower number of product owners, lower number of product backlogs, and a bigger number of teams working on the single product backlog. Now you are making a trade-off between adaptiveness and efficiency. Because now, let's assume we have 6 teams, like on this picture, working on this big green product, as opposed to this yellow scattered one. And they don't need to know everything in detail, but they all, the whole team, all 6 teams, need to have the same overview of the overall context. And it takes some time for them to have the whole context. So these people might not individually work in the most efficient way because they invest a larger percentage of their time into understanding the context. However, whenever there are changes in understanding of customer needs and therefore in overall priorities, the whole group can change direction much easier than if the whole group is highly specialized into smaller things and then have to understand the new priorities later on. So the group is, thanks to this, more adaptive. However, the individual efficiency might be seen as a lower. So this is making a trade-off with the product definition. However, it is the crucial question, and not having optimal product definition might lead in the end to the overall ineffectiveness of the whole product group. You may end up with local optimizations and actually not delivering the action value for the customer if you go more towards the yellow setup. Unfortunately, some companies fall for the trap that bigger manageability is actually more helpful than bigger adaptiveness. So this would be everything I wanted to say today. I will shortly or briefly wrap it up. So in the heart of Agile approach is adaptiveness. Agile equals adaptiveness. They just picked the wrong word, but adaptiveness is why the whole movement is here, and adaptiveness means to respond to changes in the market and first of all, understanding of the customer needs. Its elements are, among others, cross-functional collaboration, autonomous teams, and focus on customer. And one of the way how to implement this approach is to adopt a Scrum framework, which is actually very simple. There's just a few rules and have a lot of blanks that you need to fill in based on your context. In Scrum, you start by the question, what is my product? Who is my customer? Whose needs does the product address and how? And basically, the product definition is an arbitrary choice that is, if I simplify it, broader product definition is closer to the customer, brings more ability to optimize the customer value. However, it's harder for the people to grasp and to put into their heads. And smaller product definition, like component teams and part of the business processes, are maybe more manageable. However, you lose the whole focus on the customer and therefore the adaptiveness. Depending on the context, my recommended approach is to go more towards the green version of the setup and having a single product owner and single product backlog, which transparently displays the priorities around the customer value and multiple teams working together, being responsible as a whole for the end-to-end delivery, rather than the yellowish version, which might favor team autonomy and utilization and efficiency at the expense of adaptiveness. Both choices are valid, but you need to answer these questions yourself first. So before I wish you bon appetit for lunch, I want to just present to you offer of courses that we are preparing together with Edit Trainings on Scrum and Agile approach. And this is the catalog being built up. On the left side, there are courses that are already available or planned. On the right side are courses that we are currently preparing and are coming soon. So just a brief, very brief description. The Scrum Foundations course is the basic foundations of Scrum, of the adaptive approach, and how Scrum builds on this, the empirical process, and focus on customers and their value. And it is delivered in a unique way, because I will not deliver it with a lecture or training, but I will let you to find out yourself how Scrum works. So you will actually discover it by the end of the training. And there is also a very unique simulation during the training that will not show you the mechanics of Scrum, which is pretty simple, but show you how it is very easy to fall for a trap, to start believing in your own assumptions even if they are not true, which is the whole point of Scrum, to prove or disprove assumptions. Second course is Professional Scrum Master, which is the Scrum.org course, which I train as a professional Scrum trainer. I am currently the only professional Scrum trainer in Czech Republic. This course is aimed not only for Scrum Masters. It's a very high quality course, which ends with the certification. You will get a coupon for an online test. I warn you, the test is not very easy. It proves that you really understand the core principles, values and rules of Scrum. So having the certification Professional Scrum Master 1 means I understand the rules of Scrum, as written in the Scrum Guide. And if you take the exam within 14 days after receiving the coupon and fail, you will have one more attempt for free. And other attempts need to be purchased from Scrum.org. We also offer a Scrum Product Owner course. We don't have date yet set, however, it is in the offer already, which is a course aimed specifically on product owners and how they optimize the value of the customer. So it has two views: one, how the product owner works with the customers and users, and how does the product owner works with stakeholders and the development team. One special course I want to point out is a Scrum Patterns, which will take place in Czech Republic for the first time this year. It's an advanced course for Scrum coaches and Scrum Masters, and delivered by Jim Coplin, who is one of the pioneers of Scrum, who is working with Scrum for more than 25 years. He personally knows Jeff Sutherland, one of the co-authors, and is a very, very big figure, and it will be an honor for me to be a co-trainer with Jim Coplin at the end of October. We also prepare other 4 courses. One is the Large-Scale Scrum, which is I described in the second part of this webinar. This is how Scrum is set up in a large environment. We have a large product. It takes dozens of people to work with. What would be the best approach to optimize for adaptiveness of the whole group? The 3 other courses are again Scrum courses, which end up with the certifications with the same rules. Professional Scrum Master 2 is aimed at the intermediate Scrum Masters with some experience, at least recommended is at least 1 year, and this just deepens your knowledge about Scrum and the facilitation techniques and the coaching techniques and team coaching techniques and such. Professional Agile Leadership is aimed at the first-line, second-line managers and higher managers, about how to actually lead people in an Agile environment, how is it different from the traditional environments. And new to the offer on Scrum.org is the Professional Scrum with User Experience, which is aimed at teams who incorporated the user experience function into the Scrum teams. It is actually how it was originally supposed to be, however many teams struggle with that, so this course focuses on this. So that would be all from my side. I thank you very much for your attention, and I would be happy to see you in person on trainings or Scrum beers or conferences or wherever else. Thank you very much. I don't see any other questions, so have a nice day and have a great lunch. Thank you very much.